Ladies and gentlemen, this is a special edition of the Wiley Drake Show. As you know, we broadcast every morning at 9 a.m. California time. That is, of course, out of our studio from the Congressional Prayer Conference of Washington, D.C., which is indeed not at 9 o'clock, but at 12 noon. I've already done my 12 noon D.C. show. That was at 9 o'clock my time. In fact, the matter is, I did my show live from inside the chambers of the Orange County Board of Supervisors. I went there for two reasons. Number one, they're giving a raise to the Sheriff's Department in Orange County, and I'm supportive of that. But there was another thing there that they've been fighting about. They're trying to figure out how to minister to the homeless. And my comment to them was, I've been working with the homeless for 25 years in Orange County, and they put together a study task force to decide what to do about the homeless, and they didn't even ask me, a question. They didn't come to me. They didn't look at our shelter. And I don't mean that to be put out. But anyway, that's where I just came from. I was there at that meeting, and they have approved now a potential area for a homeless shelter, and we're going to be very supportive of that. We have a great deal. We have probably somewhere around 20,000 people. Last night, when I and my guest in a moment, Jim Gilchrist, when we laid down last night, our head on the couch or on the bed, there were some 20,000 people in Orange County, high-rent Orange County, that did not have a place to sleep. They slept out behind a motel. They slept in a dumpster. They slept on the street. They slept in a car. About 20,000 of them in Orange County. That's why we've been in business for 25 years. That's what we do. But I want to digress and go away from that and talk about why we're on today. As many of you know, I do a show at 9 a.m. California time, and then tonight again I'll do another show at 5 p.m., and I'll go back to my studio and do that. But in the meantime, between 9 and 5, I do what I call on-location, impromptu, what I feel are led by God to do special broadcasts. We're on a special broadcast now from one of my favorite spots to broadcast, and that is Starbucks. My drug of choice is coffee, and so I'm a coffeeholic, and I drink a lot of Starbucks. In fact, the matter is, I even have a granddaughter, who just gave me my first great-grandbaby, and she's a barista at Starbucks. She had to quit doing it for a while because she was so pregnant, and but she'll be going back after the baby. The baby is here, and I am indeed a great-grandpa. But anyway, we didn't do this show to talk about me, but us grandpas, we got to talk about our grandkids. Now, back in 2004, I heard about a man here in our county, and his last name was Gilchrist. Gilchrist is actually the way it's spelled, and that attracted me because I'm a Christian. And I heard about him, and I heard about his patriotism, and I heard about his activism. And, of course, as all of you know, I'm a patriot. I'm the chairman of the Congressional Prayer Conference of Washington, D.C. I go to D.C. once a month, and I travel a lot. I am also a chaplain to Oath Keepers. I was also and am also a chaplain to Operation American Spring. And so I'm a patriot and I'm an activist. Well, back in 2004, I met a man by the name of Jim Gilchrist and his wife, Sandy, I believe. Is that right? Sandy. And my wife was still with me at that time. My wife didn't pass away till 2010. So this was about 6 years before my wife passed. But Sandy really took Barbara, my wife, under her wing. Barbara was going through some very difficult times at that time. And when Jim and I'd get together and talk politics, Sandy and Barbara would talk shopping and those kind of things. And so she really did take my wife under her wing. And, of course, they live in South County. We live up in North County. And but there began a relationship, and I began to find out what Jim was doing. And at that point, I heard about an organization called Minuteman, and I said, I'm interested in that. And I went to him and asked him about it, and he told me about it, and we proceeded ahead. And very quickly, in fact, in 2006, In 205. In 205, Jim Gilchrist appointed me as the chaplain at large for Minuteman Project. And I've been that ever since. At least I assumed I was until the other night I called him and I said, "This is your chaplain. Call me back." And I didn't get a call till the next day. I thought maybe he had fired me. But he finally called and I said, "Good to talk with you again. I've been hearing some things about some of his new activism, and we're going to talk about that in a minute." But I called him the other night and said, "Call your chaplain." And he did finally call me back, and I did get him on the phone. And I had one question: "Am I still your chaplain?" And he said, "Absolutely." So, ladies and gentlemen, I sit before you at Starbucks today, the officially appointed by the head man, Jim Gilchrist, in 205, and reiterated in 214 that, yes, Wiley Drake is still the chaplain for the Minuteman. Now, I want to switch off of all of this nonsense about me, and I told Jim I want to get together, and I want to get not only me, but my audience up to date. And I heard recently, and then I'm going to put the camera on Jim and let him do most of the talking with me just having a few questions. But I heard recently that he had a project called the Normandy, Operation Normandy. Now, that struck my attention for two reasons. Over the last 5 years, I've been going to D.C. several times a month fighting a fight over Normandy. Fighting a fight because they put in the World War II Memorial. And when I walked through the World War II Memorial, I said, "This is absolutely fantastic," because I'm a twice-tour Vietnam veteran. This was absolutely fantastic for D-Day and for those great men of World War II. But as we walked through there, I was impressed with it from a military man's point of view. But as a pastor, as a chaplain, we went through there and we did not find one reference to God. Not one reference to God. And I pitched a fit, and we started trying to do something about it. Well, fast forward, long story, for that monument, we began to get politicians involved, and indeed there was a bill submitted to place on that World War II memorial the D-Day prayer that our president prayed back in those days on radio. That's when the presidents first went on radio, and he came on and gave a long prayer as President of the United States, and it was called the D-Day prayer. Well, I said, we need to have that on that World War II memorial, and I'm proud to say that it is not up there yet, but it has been passed. The House and the Senate unanimously passed, and the D-Day prayer will be in the very near future on the World War II memorial. And when I heard that Jim Gilchrist had a Operation Normandy, I said, "Hey, I want to find out about that." And that's what I'm doing here today. I'm his friend, I'm his chaplain, but I'm here as a reporter for the Wiley Drake Show. And by the way, when I first met Jim, we were doing some radio shows, but we weren't on TV then, we only had radio. Jim was on my radio show several times, as well as some other folk that worked with him, and Sandy as well. And now, I'm glad to say, tell your wife she's got to be on the program, because before we couldn't see how beautiful she was, and now we can get her on the television camera and have her share with us as well. Now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce you to my friend and my boss at the chaplaincy that I have agreed to serve all these years and just reiterated. And ladies and gentlemen, that is none other than my friend Jim Gilchrist. Jim Gilchrist, that's your camera. You see that red, well, you can't see it, but anyway, you see yourself there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Jim Gilchrist. Jim, tell us your title today and tell us a status of what's going on.
Yes, I'm the founder and president of the Minuteman Project, an organization I conceived in 2004 to bring national awareness to issues critical to the domestic tranquility of the United States of America, primarily the immigration crisis that our nation has been facing for several decades now. By the way, Pastor, the reason I didn't call you back for 24 hours is that I've been so inundated with media requests and email inquiries over Operation Normandy that I just didn't have the time.
I understand that, brother. And I was only teasing. I wasn't harassing you because I knew you were busy. I know you've always been busy, and I'm the only guy I know that walks around with a cell phone up to his ear 24/7, and I knew it would take a while for you to get me. But thank you so much for calling me. Thank you for allowing me to continue my duty. I've been your chaplain since 2005. You first appointed me in 2005. That was a long time ago. And we went to the border together several times. I went to some other places several times. He went by himself. We worked together with several organizations. And by the way, a real good friend of mine who I also work for as a chaplain is Colonel Harry Riley, great mighty man of God, one of the most highly decorated colonels that's alive today, and he has Operation American Spring. But let's get back now. Tell our listening audience, because I have people that watch me, that have been on with me for years on radio and now on TV, and some of them know exactly where I'm coming from, i.e. immigration and so forth, and Minuteman, but many of them do not. Many of them are saying, who the heck is Wiley Drake? And so I want you to tell our listening audience, not about who Wiley Drake is, they can check me out on Google, but to tell them what is the Minuteman Project, and then you have a new project I want you to talk about. But tell us about Minuteman first.
Right, the Minuteman Project, like I said earlier, was conceived with the specific goal to bring national awareness to the illegal alien invasion of the United States of America. And yes, I use the word invasion because that's exactly what it is. Not in the sense that people are coming here with bayonets fixed and rifles, fiery rifles blasting lead across our beaches, but a systematic, literal transfer of huge segments of populations of other countries into the United States. The reason for that, in my opinion, is that this isn't by design and somewhat by default. The default is that we're not enforcing our immigration laws, so thereby encouraging more of this to happen. The design is that there has been a concerted and deliberate effort, primarily by the Democratic Party, but also cooperation with the Republican Party, to transfer as many people into the United States from third world countries as possible, grant them amnesty, and according to my immigration legal counsel, after amnesty is granted, there's only a 5-year waiting period before they become voters. This puts, currently there are about 30 million illegal aliens occupying U.S. territory. If they were to receive amnesty today, in 5 years, the Democratic Party will have 30 million pledging voters to support them, guaranteeing that they will have the absolute power to hold every office from dog catcher to President of the United States. Every bureaucrat appointed will be a Democrat.
Amen.
Every employee working for every facet of public government, federal, state, and local, will be a Democrat. This is something you would see in China. It's called communism.
That's right.
By usurping the rule of law and convoluting the interpretation of the Constitution of the United States, essentially you can manipulate our way of life into the same way of life they're experiencing in China. It's called a one-party system. In this case, the Democrats will control everything.
Yeah.
Now, half the Republicans are complicit with this. The other half are not. They believe in the vision of our founding fathers. So, putting all that aside, that's the reason, essentially, that I thought I should attempt to bring 310 million Americans out of the fog that our elected officials have put us in, and in the same way that they're trying to bring 30 million illegal aliens out of the shadows. Our fog is that we've been duped, and we've blindly believed everything our political governors have told us for the last 40, 50 years, which is part and parcel of politics.
Amen.
You build the trust to breach the trust.
Yes.
to fulfill your own personal agenda, whether you're a president, a governor, a city councilman, a mayor, a sheriff, police chief, so on and so forth.
Now, how do we get to this? You talked about a project. You talked about Operation Normandy. What do you mean by that? What is your thinking behind that name and the process?
In dealing with the latest surge against our borders, predominantly from the southern border, I was thinking back, when was the last time we had a leader, a national leader, who was who took our immigration policies and our immigration law enforcement seriously? And that person was President Dwight Eisenhower. We have not had a president taking our immigration issues seriously since 1960.
Amen. Amen.
Also, President Eisenhower organized and led the largest invasion in the history of the world into France.
Yes, yes.
To exterminate the Axis powers,
yes.
Germany, Italy,
yes.
Japan. Essentially, it was a European invasion, had nothing to do with the Japanese theater at the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm old enough, Jim, I'm old enough, I still have one of those little business cards that says, I like Ike.
Well, I wish I had that. That's a valuable item. So I thought I would give this operation, instead of just the Minuteman Project, I would call it Operation Normandy, in memory of President Eisenhower.
Amen.
Out of respect for him.
Amen, brother.
And also because the size of this operation, compared to the original Minuteman Project in April of 2005, will be enormous. It's going to be at least 10 times as large. And instead of covering 23 miles of the San Pedro River Valley in Arizona against the Mexican border, we are going to cover every porous border area from San Diego, California to Brownsville, Texas.
Amen.
A 1,989-mile stretch of wilderness and wasteland in most cases.
Yeah.
It will take a phenomenal response from the public, which I am getting. And it doesn't stop there. This is a two-pronged event. Not simultaneously, for the month of May in 2015, beginning with May 1st, 2015, through and including Memorial Day, May 30, 2015, we are going to also launch protests at all of the 51 Mexican consulates that have taken up housekeeping in the United States. You could not convince me that having 51 consulates, Pastor Drake, from one foreign country, a neighboring country, was not a certain indication of encouraging an overwhelming inflow of that nation's population into the United States, whether they're here legally or illegally. This is part of some greater plan, in my opinion.
Amen. Amen.
By primarily the Democratic Party, followed by the Republican Party, about half of that party, to essentially garner the votes of a segment of our society that has no right to vote, by through the magic waving of a magic wand, granting them amnesty and voting rights.
Well, and of course that's what Barry Soetoro, who is also AKA Barack Hussein Obama, and as you know, I ran for vice president in 2008 with Dr. Alan Keyes as presidential candidate, and we obviously did not win, but because I have been involved in politics and because I have learned not only from men like you who've been in the battlefield, but men like Alan Keyes who've been on the battlefield in D.C. One of the things that we are learning is that Barry Soetoro very cleverly did not bring in those diseases that came in here by accident. That was on purpose. That is biological warfare. We have, right now, just south of us here, we have 7 Border Patrol agents that are on furlough. They're not on furlough because they're on vacation. They're not on furlough because they were in trouble. They're on furlough because they're in quarantine. They have tuberculosis, which we almost wiped out in this country, but other countries have it. They also have terrible cases of scabies and other diseases that we have no immunities for. And so, but Barry Soetoro attack us in several ways. Number one, what you're talking about is a political attack. Bring in your army of people so they can vote for your party. And then in light of that, to stop us from stopping them, they brought in biological warfare. And we were just down in Murrieta. Murrieta said, no, you're not bringing all those contaminated people into our town. They stopped 4 bus loads from coming in, thereby protecting their town and thereby protecting all the surrounding areas. We saw the bus that they were going to attempt to unload, and when they did that, that bus was absolutely inundated with smaller children primarily. But they had most of them didn't even have shoes on. The ones that did have had no shoelaces. They told us that the people that put them on the bus took their shoelaces away from them. Now why? Well, that was the routine of the government for people in jail. I remember going to jail one time. Well, been more than once, but one time, and they took my shoelaces. I said, where are you taking my shoelaces? And they said, well, we don't want you to hang yourself or to choke somebody, so we take your shoelaces away. So this effort has been twofold. A biological attack on the United States of America. Because if they can get all of those diseases in here, guess what? We're going to be so busy, not only being humanitarians and feeding them, but we're going to be so busy trying to prevent their diseases from spreading that we're not going to know what's going on. And, of course, the other part of the battle is the one that you're talking about, and that is they're bringing those people in here so they can get them inundated upon us so they'll be able to vote. And so tell our listening friends if they would like to check out Operation Normandy or the Minuteman Project, tell them how to get to the websites and so forth, would you please?
Sure. Visit us at MinutemanProject.com. That's MinutemanProject.com. And go to the area where it asks you to, quote-unquote, jump in. We'll ask you to register your intent to join us for the entire month or a portion of that month of next year, either at a Mexican embassy, a Mexican consulate, of which there are at least 51 across the United States, and bring your grievance forward to the consulate, or join us on the border from anywhere from San Diego, California to Brownsville, Texas. We have a lot of work to do. I'd like to make a comment about the children that have come here.
Go ahead.
The children, in my opinion, that have been the vanguard of the latest surge against our border in South Texas are essentially being used in a very clever manner by those on both sides of the border who are supportive of a vast and uncontrollable surge of illegal aliens into the United States. They're being used as human shields.
Yep.
Not in the sense of physical warfare, but in the sense of ideological warfare.
Amen.
We have laws that George Bush and Congress enacted in 2008, one specific law that allows children from countries other than Canada and Mexico, in other words, children from any other place in the world who have come here illegally under the age of 18 from anywhere but Mexico or Canada to remain here until they face an immigration judge. They're cited and released into the custody of either a relative here, an orphanage, a religious group, people who want to volunteer to take care of them. More than 90% of those children will not return to face an immigration judge. They will somehow be lost and blended in to our population. They will be here for years. Essentially, they will be here forever. And this is the human shield being used by the criminal cartels in Mexico and in the United States who are complicit in this illegal transfer of human cargo from all around the world into the United States, generally in exchange for a fee of anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000. It's a lot of money. It's worth as much as the drug trade. In that you have about $85 billion worth of U.S. dollars going to Mexico.
Big dollars going to Mexico.
For heroin, meth, and grass, so on and so forth. Well, in this case, you get $6,000 to $25,000 in exchange for guiding an illegal alien through Mexico into the United States, and then you drop them off at the border. You bring 10 in, you've made $60,000 to $250,000 without a shot being fired and without being in fear that you're going to be gunned down by a competitive drug dealer.
Well, you know, interestingly enough, also, Jim, is that we are finding out, as many of my listeners know, the Benghazi effect that happened, and the president and Hillary said it was all because of a video, and it turned out it wasn't because of that video. It was because of Al-Qaeda attacking that consulate. There wasn't even an embassy. It was just a consulate. And the man who produced that movie that they put in jail for a while is a guy by the name of Nakula Basila Nakula. He is a resident at my church in Buena Park, California. The State Department released him to my custody. And I say that, most of my folks know about that, but I say that to say pray for Nakula, but also he does a show on our radio show, and it's in Arabic, so you can't listen to it unless you speak Arabic, but he does a show called The Truth every Thursday night. But I say all of that to say, we're hearing from him because he does speak good English when he talks to us, and he is sharing that the word is out on the street. Now, I'm talking about Cairo, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, talking about all of the Arab Emirates and those areas over there. The word is out. If you want to go to America, now's the time to go. The borders are porous. The borders are open. Now is the time to go to the border and push your way in as a Muslim. Whereas before, you might not have been able to get in. Now they're saying, America is wide open. Go ahead and go to America. To the Muslims.
Pastor, our border has always been open season. And this precursor, this human shield wave of children, is essentially the precursor to a much, much larger invasion that's going to be coming shortly.
Amen.
I went to the border with an international news network 2 weeks ago. Give them a tour of the border in Campo, California. It took over 2 hours for one Border Patrol agent to show up, interdict us, and inquire as to who we were and what we were doing. And they're not intimidating. And
so you were there for on a tour, so to speak, for a couple of hours.
Educational tour to international media.
But you could have been doing who knows what.
It could have been encouraging bringing human cargo or drug contraband over the border. A year ago, I would go to the border with college researchers, university professors doing research on the issue, or a news team, and within 2 minutes, there were 24 Border Patrol agents upon us, by helicopter, by SUVs, marked SUVs, by ATVs, and on foot. There was no way anyone was going to get anywhere near that border without being spotted. And again, they didn't intimidate us. They were there just to find out, who are you, what are you doing, okay, thank you, and on with their business, and we would go on with ours. So there has been a draw, certainly from our Border Patrol law enforcement officers, from their posts along the border to McAllen, Texas, to change diapers and play babysitter.
Now, Jim, you're talking about Operation Normandy, and it's going to be, what's the date again?
Operation Normandy will last from May 1st to May 30th, 2015. It's going to take me 10 months to put this together and organize it. It is much larger than the original Minuteman project of 2005, which took almost 6 months to get up and running. Because of the logistical complications in amassing an assembly of this magnitude, it takes time. It's not like picking up the telephone, asking a couple of buddies, let's go to the border and save America overnight. We're not talking about 1,250 people who volunteering coming to 23 miles of Arizona. We're talking about at least 3,500 non-militia, at least, and it could be very well 35,000 to show up. Plus, all the militias have a right to jump in. I have no authority over anyone. I don't tell anyone what to do.
Amen.
I'm an independent, sovereign American citizen doing my thing on the border under the First Amendment. I have an irrevocable right, just like everyone else, to assemble peacefully and speak peacefully and bring my grievance forward to a federal government that has literally abandoned us, including our state governors, our mayors, and some of the law enforcement honchos, because they are under orders by a mayor, for example. Either you will not enforce the immigration laws or we will fire you and replace you with another police chief. Case in point, Los Angeles, William Bratton.
Absolutely. And let me just give you another example. This is a personal example of exactly what you're talking about. As I mentioned, and I'm not saying this to brag, but as I mentioned, in 2007 I met with Alan Keyes and prayed about and decided that in 2008 I would be his vice presidential candidate. So that meant Wiley Drake was vice presidential candidate in 2008. That brought with it a certain amount of notoriety. People would say, oh, you're a nut, you can't possibly win. Or they'd say, hey, I'll vote for you, kind of thing. But the point I'm making is that was in 2008 now. We're in 2014. In 2008, when I was running, in 2009, when we found out we didn't make it, and in 2010, and of course that's the year my wife passed away, so I was sort of out of things in that year to some degree. But in 2010 and 2011, I was still getting calls from media, and I could still pick up the phone and call the governor of California, and he would return my call. I could pick up the phone and call my congressman, Ed Royce, who is over in Brea. He's my congressman. I could call him up, and within hours, he would return my call. I could call up almost anybody in any political leadership role, and they would return my call almost immediately. Now, that was because of my little bit of notoriety in the 2008. Now, over the last year and a half, as I have gotten involved in standing against this immigration thing and demanding that our government protect our nation, I cannot get my congressmen or my senators or anyone in politics to even return my telephone calls. All of a sudden, that's Wiley Drake. We're not calling him because I am standing up for protecting our borders and because they don't want to be involved with me anymore. And so we have our work cut out for us, Jim. We really do.
Yes, we're going to win this debate. We're going to win this contest.
Absolutely.
This is not a war, ladies and gentlemen, in the physical sense.
No, that's right.
It's an ideological war with a wayward federal government, and that waywardness has trickled down to our state governors, our city mayors, so on and so forth. This is a contest with our federal government primarily, and we're going to win it, and our weapon of choice is the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America,
That's right.
The very cornerstone of everything we do in this country, of every right we have. And until they strip us of our First Amendment right, we're going to win this unless they strip us of that right, and they very well might attempt to do so. In the maybe a bizarre scenario, it is possible that the President of the United States or governors of the border states could enact impromptu laws by the simple writing with a pen, preventing us from assembling.
Yes.
We would have to go in through federal courts to hold them liable for that, but in the meantime, it will do severe damage to this movement. So we have to be apprised of any attempts by President Obama, by Eric Holder, from the Department of Justice, by the governors of any of the border states to enact overnight laws preventing us from exercising our right to free speech.
And folks, let me say this to you. If you are aware that if you're in one of those border states and you hear of any of that going on, call me, call Jim. Let's put it on the air. We do 2 international television shows every day, Monday through Friday. We want to put it on the air. We want to hear the rumors. If something is about to happen in Arizona or New Mexico or Texas or one of the governors, please let us know. Ladies and gentlemen, you can bring it on our program no matter how much of a rumor it may be, and it may sound far out, but we want you to bring it to us, and we will put it on the air. And I like what Jim said a while ago. Ladies and gentlemen, I am an activist, and I have been a politician. But more than all of that, I am a chaplain to God's people. And I believe this movement must be a movement in reference to the rights he was talking about. And I'm here to say, as Jim has also said, I'm here to say the right that I have, my First Amendment right, as much as I love the Constitution, as much as I love the Bill of Rights, that wasn't what gave me that right. In fact, the Constitution says God gave that right. That's why I, as a chaplain, am involved, because it's a God-given right. And our Constitution must protect that God-given right as well as the Bill of Rights. And so, as I've come back on board to work as a chaplain for this Operation Normandy, I want you to know, folks, we're here. We're not going armed with anything but the Constitution and the Holy Bible. That's our weapons of choice, and that's
Pastor,
our arm.
I'd like to add one thing to that. Whatever you do, ladies and gentlemen, if you're involved with Operation Normandy, there is only one rule. One rule, and that's it. That rule is, whatever you do, stay within the rule of law.
Amen.
And we will win this debate. We will win this contest. We will win this unarmed war with our own government.
That's right.
By the way, the $3.7 billion that President Obama wants for the welfare benefit programs of the 80,000 illegal aliens who just came over the border in the last few months, the minors, wouldn't that have been better used to further fund the Veterans Administration so that we wouldn't have the several hundred combat wounded veterans who died in the streets because they could not get VA medical attention in the last few years?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that $3.7 billion be better used there?
That would have gone a long way toward helping our veterans. Over in the Los Angeles area, for example, is a veterans home, a veterans park that was donated many years ago by a family. Over 300 acres were donated for the use of a veterans park and home.
Nice.
That property still belongs to the veterans, but it's been taken over by Brentwood and by the people of Hollywood, and they've made a big park out of it. And now there's the veteran. We have over 30,000 homeless veterans in L.A., and they can't even get in their own park. The gate has a lock on it. We were there just this last Sunday. We'll be there again this Sunday.
How many of those 20,000 to 30,000 homeless people in Los Angeles County are going to die?
A lot of them will die on the street.
Lack of nourishment, medical attention.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that $3.7 billion
would have gone a long way.
Save hundreds or thousands of lives by using it for our own? One of the problems, I call it the Star Trek mentality that has afflicted our nation. It started, of course, back in the 60s. We are trying to be all things to all people in all ways and in all places. But we are trying to be nothing to our own society. And there's something seriously distorted.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I want to encourage you to go to the websites. I'm going to have Jim give them in just a moment how to get in touch with them again. I'm going to have him do that again. And then, but also I want you to know, the Wiley Drake Show, the chaplain for the Minuteman, is declaring a military term here. for this situation, and that is when we were in the military. When I flew into Vietnam, when I flew on a chopper into the jungle, if we had, I was a mechanic. I wasn't a Marine or a pilot, but my commander said, I want my mechanic on that helicopter in case something goes wrong. Well, if we were going into the jungle or coming back out bringing wounded, if we had a problem, if we had a malfunction of the ship, the aircraft, if we had a malfunction, there was one quick word I could yell.
Mayday.
Mayday. Mayday. And that meant we need help. And our nation is in distress. Mayday is coming up.
And now you know why I chose the month of May. The original name of the operation was Operation Mayday.
Okay.
But out of respect for the last president we had who actually enforced our immigration laws,
Amen,
I gave it Operation Normandy, which was the most spectacular assembly of military might in the history of any nation.
Amen.
That was organized by General Dwight Eisenhower, who became one of the best presidents we've ever had.
Amen. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap this up here in a moment, but I want you to remember, Mayday, the 1st of May, is going to be Operation Normandy. Now, Jim, tell our listening audience, if they're interested in finding out more about Mayday, they know how to get my show, they know how to call me, but tell them how to get the Minuteman Project and the Operation Normandy. Tell them again.
Right, just go to MinutemanProject.com, look for Operation Normandy, click on that, and sign up, jump in, if you will. If you're an organization, have your organization jump in. Texas Minutemen have jumped in. They are 800 strong. They're going to be providing about 800 personnel to observe and report in outposts along the Texas border. There are other groups equally as large. Come one, come all.
Amen.
This is our, remember the term broken arrow?
Yeah.
This is our broken arrow.
Amen.
That's a military term for we are being overrun, calling reinforcements.
Amen.
Let's roll, America. It's time to save our country.
Amen. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, you have just heard about Operation Normandy. You've just heard from Jim Gilchrist. You've heard how to get in touch with him. And I want to say to Jim here publicly, live on worldwide television, that the Wiley Drake Show, and I have a meeting this Saturday with the ambassador from the African country of Burundi. He is also my co-chairman on the Congressional Prayer Conference of Washington, D.C.'s television and radio network. And we're going to officially kick off on this Saturday that the Wiley Drake Show, the Congressional Prayer Conference of Washington, D.C., will be, if you will allow us to, the official media arm of Operation Normandy. And we'll do everything we can to get it on television and radio. And right now, this is on television and on radio, but we'll put it on in the future. God bless you, Jim.
Thank you very much, Pastor.
And thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I want to remind you, we'll be back on at 5 o'clock with our regular evening show. Not sure who else will be on with me then, but I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Mayday, folks. Mayday. Operation Normandy. And Minuteman Project. Go to that and check it out and be a part of it.